We begin with the poem The Olive Tree by Mark O'Connor. Nobody knows how long it takes to kill an olive tree. Drought, axe, fire are admitted failure. Hack one down, grub out a ton of main root for fuel, and next spring every side root will send up shoots. A great frost can leave the trees leafless for years. They revive. Invading armies will fell them. They return through the burnt-out ribs of siege machines. Only the patient goat, nibbling his way down the ages, has malice to master the olive. Sometimes, they say, a man finds a dead orchard, fired and goat-cropped centuries back. He settles and fences. The stumps revive. His grandchildren's family prosper by the arduous oil-pressing trade. Then wars and disease wash over. Goats return. The olives go under, waiting another age. Their shade still lies where Socrates disputed. Gethsemane's withered groves are bearing yet. As we prepare for the word preached, would you join with me your hearts and minds in prayer? O God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of each of our hearts be found acceptable in your sight, for you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Now, while the poet in the poem I just read may have taken a little artistic license with the actual age of the Gethsemane olive trees, it is true. The trees in that mile-long garden along the mountain ridge above Jerusalem are ancient and still producing. There are olive trees in the Mediterranean, which science has verified are over 2,000 years old. There's a reason why the psalmist plants for us amid those who boast of mischief and plot destruction, amid their treachery and lies, a symbol of plenty, the olive tree. For more than 6,000 years, human beings have cultivated these tiny fruits from these magnificent, short, stout trees. Plucked directly from the tree, olives are bitter and inedible. But legend has it that after some olives fell from a tree into the briny waters of the Mediterranean Sea, a new food was born, with which the world has had a love affair ever since. After only 5 years of life, an olive tree can produce fruit, on average 400 pounds of olives a year. And there exists in Croatia an olive tree scientifically carbon radioactively dated to 1,600 years old that still produces fruit today. That tree alone has produced a whopping 640,000 pounds over its lifetime. Maybe its prolific nature is why the psalmist paints the olive tree as the symbol of plenty for us in this psalm. In comparison to lies and treachery, which only produce falsehoods and deception, a false narrative and a betrayal of trust, the olive tree produces nourishment, and abundantly so. After we read Psalm 52, well, we find that we have a lot in common with ancient people. So many of their leaders, along with so many of ours, are not as fruitful as we would hope they would be. So often, what they produce lacks what really nourishes the common good, producing instead what only serves as succor for their ravenous appetites for greed and power. Appetites which leave the rest of us wanting. Instead of a vision of plenty, the olive tree's instead, as a vision of plenty, the olive tree's prolific, trustworthy, and true nature to produce fruit that nourishes in abundance serves as a counter-narrative to that which so often, touted by those in power, both in ancient and modern times, only produces more want. If we seek sustenance from the uprooted ones who refuse to take refuge in God and root themselves in their own wealth alone, we will always be left wanting. However, if we plant ourselves as olive trees, we too will receive a wealth of riches from the ground of God's own being, and those who shelter with us will be safe under the canopy of God's steadfast love. Perhaps, though, there's another reason why the ancient psalmist points us toward the olive tree as a psalm of plenty, an emblem of unwavering over and against the ungodly. It isn't only that the olive tree is prolific and generous, two marks of abundance. No, it's that the olive tree is practically indestructible. Olive trees are so robustly rooted that they can withstand nearly any anxiety the tree experiences on the surface. Imagine a fire comes along and scorches the surface of the earth. The roots of the olive tree will recover, producing new trees. Imagine frost sweeps over the earth and zaps the tree's ability to produce. Yet, in the spring, new shoots appear. The dead wood is removed, and these shoots grow up to be fruit-producing trees again. Disease harms groves. The groves can recover more often than not. Moreover, and perhaps most important, olive trees are drought tolerant. They can survive on shallow soil with little more than the winter's rainfall, which they have soaked up and stored. Yes, perhaps these are the reasons why the psalmist plants us as an olive tree in the garden of God. We must be so robustly rooted in the steadfast love of God that we grow to be practically indestructible too. We must root ourselves so as to withstand nearly any anxiety that comes our way. Imagine when the fires of life rage and we suffer burnout, which leaves us scorched and singed. We must trust that we will recover. Robustly rooted in God, we participate in our own recovery. Imagine when we become frozen with fear, frostbit by old experiences and rendered unable to produce in the present moment, we must trust that a new spring will come and we will produce new shoots. Robustly rooted in God, we must participate in our own rebirth. When disease or dis-ease comes, and we are no longer at ease with our own surroundings, when worry comes and consumes, or problems arise, or change comes too quickly and it's altogether too much to bear, we must remember that we will regain ourselves once again. Robustly rooted in God, we must participate in our own regeneration. When we are parched, brittle and bone dry, we must remember that we have soaked up a lifetime of life-giving, living water from which we can now draw. Robustly rooted in God, we must participate in our own redemption. Fire and frost, disease and drought, these are all anxiety-producing events for trees. But the olive tree is built to withstand such anxiety. Well, friends, we live in an age of great anxiety. I don't know a single person who's not stressed about something. But we too are built to withstand such anxiety because we, like the olive tree, we too are robustly rooted in God. And we forget that sometimes. Instead of believing in the story of Jesus and his love, sometimes we turn our attention to and begin to take stock in the myths we have been told from time to time. Imagine, for instance, in the face of burnout, we believe in the myth of overproduction. If we do more, we can just beat burnout. Ah, that's funny. And imagine, in the face of fear, we believe in the myth of security. If we protect ourselves and those like us, we'll be safe. And in the face of dis-ease, so often we believe in the myth of assimilation. If we insist on sameness, we'll protect our way of life. And in the face of drought, be that any drought, a lack of money, a lack of energy, or a lack of love, well, sometimes in the face of drought, we believe in the myth of scarcity. We believe that there's not enough. There's not enough money. There's not enough energy. There's not enough love. And therefore, we, like the ancient people who hoarded the manna in the desert because they believed there wasn't enough, we, like those ancient people, hoard what we have. We hoard our money and our energy and our love. And when we all withhold, we prove the myth of scarcity to be right. When we all withhold, well, there's never enough. In this age of great anxiety, we must remind one another of what is true. We must be like the angels who greet unsuspecting servants of God with, "Don't be afraid, I bring you good news." Don't be afraid. And in this age of anxiety, whether that be great anxiety about the world in which we live and its future, or great anxiety about a personal problem we face, or great anxiety about the communal conundrum of what to do with a broken elevator, we must remind one another that we are the people of God. We are the people of God, and we are robustly rooted in God. We are fruitful, and we produce in abundance. Yes, sometimes it takes a little salt, but we're called to be the salt of the earth as well, yes? We do not believe in the myth of scarcity, but in the promise of plenty. And we've been planted here. We all have been planted here. In your own life, in the life that we share as citizens of this place, and in our common life as a church, we have withstood fire and frost, dis-ease and drought before, and we will do so again, for we are like olive trees in the house of God, trusting in God's steadfast love. In that love, we are robustly rooted, and in that love, we flourish. Amen.